Welcome, everyone. Glad you could join us. My name is Bill Brown. I'm the Assistant Director for Strategy and Engagement for the Environmental Resilience Institute at Indiana University. Also the lead for the new Indiana Resilience Funding Hub, which is a collaboration between the Environmental Resilience Institute and the Center for Rural Engagement. And you can post your questions during the webinar in the chat. We may pick something during one of the speakers' talks, but we probably will wait till the end. We'll have a Q&A. This webinar is being recorded, and you'll be able to find it in our previous webinars on our website. So our special guests today are Greg Glassley. He's the Director of Energy and Utility Programs at the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. Julie Wilson is the Energy Assistance Program Manager from Indiana South Central Community Action Program. And Steve Kramer is the Weatherization Program Manager at Indiana South Central Community Action Program. Next slide, please. So today we're going to have an overview of new federal climate resilience funding, overview of the Energy Assistance Program, and an overview of the Weatherization Program. And with that, I will turn it over to Greg.
Thanks, Bill. And if you want to go ahead and kick off my slides. So appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Greg Glassley, as Bill said. I'm the Director of Energy and Utility Programs here at IHCDA, so the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. Next slide, please. And just to give a little bit of background in case anyone is needs to become a little bit familiar with IHCDA. We have a lot of different programs at IHCDA. So our mission is to provide housing opportunities, promote self-sufficiency, and strengthen communities. We are a quasi-state agency that reports to the Lieutenant Governor, Suzanne Kraut. So we follow most of state agencies' policies, but because we're quasi, we've got a couple of things that are allow us to be a little bit different. And like I said, we're involved in a lot of housing programs, mortgage programs. I get to assist, in this little energy and utility world, but you can go to our website to see the kind of full suite of programs. Next slide, please. And so to achieve our mission and our goals, just want to hit on a couple of those that are kind of unique to weatherization, energy assistance, but enhancing self-sufficiency is really big, and promote initiatives that allow Hoosiers to improve the quality of life. And that's really, really important to us. And both of these programs, the Energy Assistance and Weatherization Assistance Program, really hit on those. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background on the Energy Assistance Program, also known as the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. We make a pretty conscious effort to refer to it as EAP as often as we can, just to kind of remove that stigma of low income. But it is funded through HHS, Health and Human Services. It is a one-time annual benefit that is really supposed to, intended to kind of continue heating service. So it's not meant to pay the entirety of your bill and or make repeated payments. And IHCDA works with HHS, but then we work with 20 sub-grantees, South Central being one of those, to actually administer and do the really heavy lifting part of the program. Next slide, please. So, and Julie's going to get into more of this stuff, but I'll just hit on it. And so we said it's an income-based program. To be income eligible for the Energy Assistance Program, you need to be at 60% of state median income or below. Listed are a bunch of the documents that are needed. We are trying actively to work to determine how to reduce that burden to clients during the application process. All of these are required just so we can prove that the people applying are who they say they are. The federal partners really make a point. Fraud, waste, and abuse is a big deal, and so we have to implement these types of things to just make sure that those that are applying, again, are who they say they are. Next slide, please. A few ways to apply. You can go onto ICDA's website, kind of follow some prompts and get to an online application. You can call 211, and there is a separate EAP prompt that somebody can help you with your assistance there. But the majority of applicants go through their local service providers, and that's the not the best way, but it's the way that's been around the longest. So we've implemented the online a few years ago, and it's gotten better, but we still work out some of those kinks. But that ability to talk face to face with somebody is through your local service provider. You can go ahead and next slide, please. So just to give you guys an idea of some overall state numbers. This past program year, so the program year runs October 1st. The application period ends mid-May, depending on what day. So May 15th, May 16th is the application period. So this year that just ended, give out over $82 million in benefits. That is specifically dollars that went into Hoosiers. So that does not include the admin to run the program by ICDA, the admin from South Central to run it, or any other agency. That is, the total award being about $128 million in federal funds this year. So gave out assistance to over 122,000 Hoosier households, which is an 11% increase over last year. You see the benefit, the average regular benefit this year is $510. The average crisis benefit was $460. You can see up a bit from last year. The crisis benefit varies specifically. So we at ICDA can control some of the amounts. So the crisis has a very, very specific meaning that you are either have your service disconnected or you have a disconnect notice and a date. And that, if you're in crisis, then there's a different pathway moving you forward a little bit. But knowing with the high energy costs, last year we really tried to bump up some of the benefit dollars to make a more substantial impact to the Hoosiers that we helped. So you can see program year 22, like I said, 110,000 households. We give out over 160 million in benefits, and that was due in part to the American Rescue Plan Act. So that funding was a one-off, so to speak. That gave Indiana in total, between regular benefit, or regular award, ARPA award, over $200 million in program year 22. And so because of that, what that allowed ICDA to do was use those extra funds to pay off arrearages on utility bills. That was unique to ARPA. That is not a common thing. And so we will find out this upcoming, as we plan for upcoming program year. We won't know until first or second week in November what Indiana's award is, even though the program starts October 1st. So we plan a little bit in the dark on what that dollar amount is going to be. So we make some estimates and we go from there. And we gave assistance last year. Sorry about that, Anna. To 15% of income eligible Hoosiers last year. So this year we're closer to 17%. Our goal, frankly, is about 20%. Knowing that we won't reach the vast majority, but we are trying to bump that up a little bit. So next slide. And this is just give you all a indication of the local service providers that cover each of those territories. So this is statewide, and it's a wide array. We've got, in Marion County, which is the densest populated, I think they gave out assistance to over 17,000 households alone. They have one agency that's providing assistance to them, but you can see throughout the state that it's a wide variety of coverage. Next slide, please. So Weatherization Assistance. So this program, and again, Steve will go into more detail on a lot of these, but just a high-level overview. This is funded through the Department of Energy. We try. So it's really the core of the program is to make sure the things that are being done to a house reduce your energy usage. It's also to make it healthier and safer, and that's really, really, really important. And we try, as a state, to make the application process fairly easy. So if you apply for EAP, on that application, there's a checkbox saying that you are interested in weatherization. And so with that, if you are income eligible for EAP, you are categorically eligible for weatherization assistance. So there's some steps that have to happen after that, but from an application standpoint, income eligibility standpoint, we really try to tie those two together. And so the way it works kind of based on priority is that, an energy audit may be completed. Some of the work done, again, Steve will get into more of this, but it's really on things to save energy. So attic wall insulation, light bulbs, fans, smoke detectors for safety, air sealing, furnace tune-ups to possible replacement. Then what happens is the agency will do a quality control inspection to make sure all the work that was done was the work that was supposed to be done, and it was done well. State monitoring, we monitor between 5 and 10% of all the jobs done throughout the state, again, to ensure for accuracy, quality, and then potentially federal monitoring. So interestingly enough, we were monitored our, sunsetting water program. We were monitored in June, and our weatherization is being monitored programmatically in September. And both Steve and Julie, because of the quality of their programs, are one of the few agencies that we've asked to be a part of those monitoring. So all that to say that we have an enormous amount of trust with South Central, and when they speak, their voices carry a lot of weight. Next slide, please. So again, the work has to be done to make the home safer, more energy efficient, healthier. It's a unique opportunity because it's a program where people get to go inside of people's homes and have really direct interaction, to touch, talk, to really educate about the importance of some of what they're doing. One of the things I know we get questions about a lot, I'm sure Steve, you get it a lot, but when things like Bill and the IRA come about, we will then get calls saying, "Oh, this is fantastic. I need new windows. I need my floor replaced. I need a new roof. I need all this." Weatherization is not a construction and repair program. It is, again, to make things more energy efficient. Now, with that, there are additional sources of funds that we use to try to get homes out of deferral. So if there is something going on at the property that where weatherization would cause a health issue or safety issue, we try to use some of these additional funds to get a home out of deferral so that it then can be weatherized. Next slide, please. So again, the eligibility, if you apply, then the income line is 200% of federal poverty level. But as I said before, if you are income eligible for EAP, you are categorically eligible for weatherization. And again, some of the documents needed there. Next slide, please. So a few numbers statewide here. We weatherize about 700 homes annually throughout the state. Department of Energy regular year funding is anywhere from $8.5 to $9.5 million. DOE will tell us how many or what our average cost per unit spend is, and so then we pass that down basically to the agencies. But we can't go nuts on a home, and so the average cost has to be around $8,000. The state takes 9 to 10% of our LIHEAP award and gives that to weatherization to then spend on top of that. So those are less restricted. So we try to do what we can to help the agencies spend more money. Certainly the bill, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, that will follow for the most part DOE regulations, and that for Indiana is an additional $90 million over a 5-year period. That is on top of our regular award. So with that, we're really hoping to get into more multifamily buildings, which, anything more than 1 unit building is multifamily. But if a building has between 5 and 24 units, DOE treats that differently than it does even a building that's got over 24 units. And so with that comes different regulations, different approvals. It takes a much longer time, but we don't do that traditionally. So we're trying to do more of that. The Inflation Reduction Act will go through the Office of Energy Development, not IHCDA, but we do have a lot of conversations with OED, knowing that a lot of what they're going to do is kind of jives with some of what we're doing. So we're making sure that the two agencies aren't kind of acting in vacuums, that where we can overlap and combine, workforce development being one of those, where we can kind of have some symmetry, we do that. So we are working with them closely on what that means for the weatherization folks. And so again, here's another map, but not too dissimilar, but this shows that not every agency that does energy assistance does weatherization, and not every agency that does weatherization does energy assistance in the state, and sometimes the counties don't necessarily overlap. So that's just to kind of give an illustration there. Next slide. So the key takeaways from my standpoint, the one application for the two programs, categorical eligibility, EAP is a one-time annual benefit, whereas weatherization, the work should have longer lasting effects. Once a home is weatherized, where DOE funds are used, it can't be touched for 15 years. So it's really important that when we go into a house and do work, that we're really doing some really solid stuff. All programs are eligible to homeowners and renters. There's some things that may have to happen with renters that they provide different documentation, but they are eligible for these. And then priority is generally given to households. There's a little bit of difference between energy assistance and weatherization assistance, but generally it's those with living in the household, it's disabled, a veteran, or active military, elderly, and then the age of children is slightly different in the two, but those get priority, and there are multiple ways to apply.
Thank you, Greg. Julie, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name's Julie Wilson, and I'm with SCAP, the shortened version of South Central Community Action Program. Next slide. We're based here in Monroe County, and we also serve Brown County, Owen County, and Morgan County with energy assistance. SCAP has been around for 58 years. Our mission is actually updated a little bit from this one to provide opportunities to all people to achieve personal and economic independence to strengthen our community. We have Head Start programs, housing choice voucher, weatherization, of course, energy assistance, and some other programs as well. Next slide. To give you an idea of, so SCAP, I would say, is a smaller to mid-sized agency administering energy assistance. There are some, like Greg said, that serve many more households than we serve, and some that serve fewer. Last year, as an example, we served just over 4,000 households in our 4-county area, and we were able to apply just over $3 million in funding using both the regular and the crisis funding for households. An average benefit using both of those fundings was just over $750, which is pretty good amount toward people's utilities as those costs continue to rise, and the cost of everything else does too. In addition to energy assistance, law HEAP funding, Duke Share the Light awarded us just over $64,000 that we could use for Duke customers that were eligible for that. The purpose of the program is to keep members of low-income households safe and healthy, and to assist them in achieving energy self-sufficiency while avoiding utility disruptions. Kind of like Greg said, there in the past couple of years, in response to the pandemic, there had been some additional funding that we were able to use. This upcoming season, there won't still be that funding. Next slide. And this is a little redundant from what Greg said, but just to give you an idea, SCAP is one of 20 agencies throughout the state administering this program. We all follow the same policy set by IHCDA. So while agencies might have, differing internal processes a little bit, overall, we're following the same process or the same policy, so that someone applying for the program in one area of the state will have the same outcome as someone applying in the different area of the state, as far as how we determine benefits, how we calculate income, and that sort of thing. Next slide. Important dates for this upcoming program is starting October 2nd. The general public can begin to apply at that time. The online application site will become live on that date. The official start of the program is November 1st every year. And that's the date that we at the agencies can begin communicating with the vendors, advocating for clients, things like that. letting clients know whether they're approved for the program, and if so, details of the benefits that they'll be getting. That's generally around the time that the funding comes in, and that we can start applying those benefits to the utility accounts. We're allowed up to 55 days to process a client's application. And then starting December 1st, moratorium protection begins for any regulated utilities like Duke or CenterPoint, that a client who is approved for energy assistance, their utility account cannot be disconnected between December 1st and March 15th because they're protected under moratorium. And then May 20th of 2024 is the last day that someone can apply for this year's program. It's a little confusing because it straddles the years from the fall through mid-May. And to give you an idea, like Steve said, or Greg said, the income guidelines are up to 60% of the state median income. You can see the chart here. So a household of 4 can be making just over $57,000 and still be eligible for our program. In order to be eligible for the program, you obviously need to maintain residency in the state of Indiana. Our EAP funds can be used for connection, reconnection, fuel and delivery costs. It cannot be used to pay toward a deposit on a client's account. And even clients whose utilities are included in their rent can be eligible for a benefit as long as they're paying $1 in rent. And that kind of, because they don't have utility accounts to apply the benefit to, they'll actually get a check in the mail or direct deposited to their bank account from the state for their benefit. And so when someone applies for the program, this is the list of what's needed in addition to the application, which must include everyone living in the household. It must be completed, all the questions answered, all that. We need a photo ID for the person signing the application. We need social security number verification for each member of the household. And if for some reason there are members in the household who aren't able to provide that, there are workarounds for a lot of these things. It's kind of just, there are a lot of nuances to the program. So we kind of lay out the basics and then can always have a conversation about things as needed along the way. It's because it's an income-based program. Income documentation is key, whether someone's working or not working, whether they have fixed income, unemployment, whatever kind of income, we're going to need that for verifying they're within the income guidelines. We need utility bills because it's a utility assistance program. And for those clients whose utilities are included in rent, require additional paperwork in the form of a landlord affidavit where the landlord is indicating some different things going on, including how much the client is paying in rent, because we must be sure they're paying $1 or more. And then there's an agency referral form that's required, which is just a way for clients to indicate to us which of our other programs they might be interested in so that we can link them with those or at least provide them the information about those. And benefits, they're determined by a matrix, and that matrix is based on 4 different categories, including poverty level, whether someone's making income on the higher end of the income guidelines or the lower end. They'll get different points based on that. Each point is $25. You add all those together and that kind of determines the size of the benefit. Dwelling types important. Someone who's living in a single site house or a mobile home is going to have a little bit higher of an energy burden than someone living in an apartment where you're benefiting from the heat from the apartments around you. Or if your utilities are included in rent, your energy burden is going to be a little bit less because of that. And households who include a member who's in one of those at-risk categories, there's someone age 60 and over, 5 and under, disabled, or a veteran, will get an additional benefit as part of their full benefit. And then the way they heat. So someone who's heating with propane or wood, the energy burden is much greater than someone whose utilities are included in rent, or even someone who's heating with electric or natural gas. And then in addition to the heating benefit, which because it's a heating program, the bulk of the benefit will go toward the heat. In addition to that, there's a standard $150 electric benefit, since it's assumed that the electric is needed to help keep the heating going. To give you an idea for this year's program, the maximum benefit someone might receive for the program is $1,800. That's going to be somebody who's on, the least amount of income, living in a single site house, probably. There's someone at risk in the household, and they're likely heating with, say, propane or wood. And then the minimum is $250. That's likely someone whose utilities are included in rent, and there's no at-risk member in the household, and still worth their while to apply. Yeah, next slide. How can someone apply for the program? And, while some of this stuff is internal processes for our particular agency, it's basically probably about that for wherever you are in the state and whatever agency is serving your area, that you can send an application into the office here at SCAP. You can mail it in, you can drop it off, you can scan and email it to our general energy assistance mailbox at epanscap.org. You can, starting October 2nd, use the IHCDA link to apply online. Just an FYI on that, it's not just them typing in their name and address. It's a full-on applying online, where they'll need to upload supporting documentation, just like they would if they were submitting a paper application. So it's a little more involved than just logging in and typing your name in or whatever. But online applying is one of the ways that someone can apply. And here at our agency, anyone who was on the program last year will automatically get sent an application packet in the mail. We've already sent out elderly households, and actually today, any households who were on last year's program who include a disabled member or a veteran in the household will be mailed out today. And then soon, any households with children 5 and under will get mailed application packets. And then October 2nd, any of our non-at-risk households who were on the program last year, their application packets will be mailed out. The last 2 years, we'd had a water assistance program. That funding was only meant to last for the 2 years. So it's no longer going to be in existence starting this fall. And things to know about the program: it is an annual program, so clients must reapply each year for us to be able to determine eligibility from year to year. It's essentially a one-time benefit, and but if someone applies for the program, they're approved, and then some later time between when they apply and when the program ends in May, if they fall into crisis, have a disconnect, become disconnected, they can contact us, and we can likely help with crisis funding at that time. So the crisis of funding is available at the time of application as needed, and one other time during the program as needed. We always encourage clients to continue to pay their bills so they don't get behind. While they are protected under the moratorium from December 1st through March 15th, after March 15th, utility companies will disconnect due to non-payment. And we can't apply an energy assistance benefit toward an inoperable heat source. Once the heat is repaired, and with proof of the repair, we can then apply that benefit. The household may be approved for the program in those cases, just not eligible for the benefit at that time. Thanks to our emergency repair and replace program, any household with an inoperable heat source who both owns their home and has an at-risk member in the household, they can be eligible to have our weatherization program. assess the situation, and then we have a contractor come in and do the work. That program's great. We're super thankful that we have it, and we've been able to help lots of homes with repairing their heating source because of that program. Average benefit for that is allowed, or $7,000 is allowed for an average benefit for that. And that program runs from November 1st through May 20th. Next slide. Emergency services, about 5 years ago, and sort of in response to the rate of occurrence of natural disasters and extreme weather, IHCDA decided to offer this additional crisis benefit as part of EAP. And so in the case of floods, tornadoes, other extreme weather, there's potentially some additional crisis funding that can be used for our energy assistance approved households. The only real time we've been able to use this in those years is when there was that polar vortex 4 or so years ago, and there had been, an extended period of extreme cold. And so someone who had applied for energy assistance, say in the fall, in November, had their propane tank full or filled then, and it was kind of a cold winter, so they ran through that, and then the polar vortex came in February. They were out of fuel because they were having to run it, stay warm. And so in that case, IHCDA said, because of this, you all can use emergency services as needed for households who are now out of or in crisis with their heat. So that's a good thing to have available as weather gets crazier all the time. And here in Monroe County, we're lucky to partner with our wonderful people at the Monroe County Public Library. They have, for the last couple of years and this upcoming year, agreed to have both staff and computers available to help our clients apply online or by paper. And I think Greg said too, we partner with 211, where a client can call, or we can encourage a client to call 211, and 211 will help that household apply online for our program. Next slide. Oh, I forgot I had that. So how can you all help? Just referring clients to us. Outreach is a big focus every year. We know that we sort of underserve our area, and it's always a question of how do you reach people who don't already know about us. We want people to know. We want to encourage them to apply, tell their friends, family, neighbors, all that to apply, so that we can help with their utilities. And so for Monroe County specific, there are different ways, they can visit us here at the office. They can email us at our general eap@nscap.org mailbox. They can call us, follow our Facebook page, and check, apply online, visit the library, call 211. Lots of different ways to get information and or to apply for the program. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Julie. That was wonderful. Next up is Steve Kramer.
Okay, I will. So this is me, I guess. Just a quick history, and then I was hired in 2019 just to fill an open energy auditor position. For 5 months, I studied more than 200 hours of classes and was mentored by a seasoned auditor, quality control inspector. And in June, got my first certification, which is a state certification. And then in December, got the national certification for auditors. February, I became the program manager, and in the next July, I got the quality control inspector certification. And I only bring that up because it's, as you'll see later, this is a technical field, I guess. We do building science. They talk about all the time in our trainings. And so there is a lot of study involved, and we have required continuing education. And so the people that are coming into your homes, they are professional, they're trained, they're certified, and they and we know what we're doing. So that was all just to say that. So next slide. So the goals of weatherization, as Greg stated earlier, we want to conserve energy, and so it saves the household money, and we want to improve the health and safety of the home and the people that live there. And then we'll touch also on some of the tests that we do in weatherization, and then what the client responsibilities are. So some of the, just a quick overview, health and safety issues. We talk a lot about indoor air quality, moisture, that kind of thing. As I mentioned, building science. Why is moisture so important? We'll talk about that. Air movement, energy efficiency, and then what are we actually doing in the weatherization? How can the client prepare, and what can they expect? So some of the health and safety concerns that we're looking for, fire hazards. We've been in homes where they've got a gas can sitting next to their gas water heater. And it's kind of scary when you walk into something like that. We want to make sure that they're not having low level carbon monoxide poisoning. We've seen that. Lead-based paint is a concern. Mold and moisture is our biggest, our most frequent health and safety issue that we find. Electrical and plumbing issues are also frequent, and then heating systems can cause problems in homes too. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Smoke detectors do save lives. Please test yours monthly. When we leave a home, every home has at least one smoke detector on every floor when we leave. So next slide. So some of the things that we do to prevent, help clients prevent fires is we make sure that they have proper clearance to combustibles. So like your flue pipe, when it goes up through your attic, depending on the type of vent, it needs to have a certain number of inches away from combustible material. And so we make sure that that is there in place. We make sure that the heating systems are maintained and the chimneys are proper, so that it's safely operating. As you can see in this picture, this was actually one of our client homes. Clean and properly ducted dryer vent not only reduces the fire risk, it also saves energy. This was our contractor. We asked them to, replace this dryer vent, and this is what they found in this client's home. So next slide. Lead-based paint. We test all homes that were built before 1978. That's when lead-based paint was outlawed for residential use. If lead work is found, it does not cause us to not do the work, but it does require us to do lead-safe work practices so that we don't make the situation worse. In this picture, you can see here, they have used lead-safe work practices. They put the plastic out, so any chips or dust goes on the plastic, and then they wrap it up and take it to a proper landfill where it can be disposed of. Carbon monoxide, there are several sources that can be in your home, your heating system, anything that is combustion appliance. So anything that has a flame on it produces carbon monoxide. If they're operating properly, they don't put off much or hardly any. But like heating systems, water heaters, if you have an attached garage where you park your car in there, you can get carbon monoxide from there. Unvented gas space heaters are like the anathema of weatherization, because they put all of their combustion products into the home. So the effects on the human body, as many of you know, headaches, flu-like symptoms, fatigue, and if prolonged exposure, obviously death. So to prevent any problems, we make sure the heating system is working properly. On your gas cooktops, don't use tinfoil in the bottom of the oven. People do that a lot to keep it clean, but it actually blocks vents and causes the oven to not burn properly, and so it creates more carbon monoxide. And if you have a range hood, turn it on when you're using a stove. Even if you have an electric stove, the range hood helps get rid of the moisture. And so I encourage everybody that has a range hood, turn it on when you're cooking. Attached garages. We make sure that they're all sealed well from the house, because we don't want any of that carbon monoxide from the car or all the other toxic stuff that people store in their garages. We don't want those fumes coming in the house. So We put, again, just like the smoke detectors, when we leave every home, even total electric homes, we put a carbon monoxide detector in every home on every level, because we want to make sure that people are safe from a totally preventable situation. All right, so we've mentioned fire and carbon monoxide, mold and moisture. Like I said earlier, is probably our most frequent issue that we find. And then we have some electrical and plumbing issues we'll show later on. So next slide. So sources of moisture, basically living produces moisture. You take a bath, you breathe, you dry your clothes, you cook, your pets, everything that we do produces moisture. If you have a house with a crawl space that does not have a vapor barrier, lots of moisture comes in from the ground. So those are the kind of things that bring moisture into a home. And plumbing leaks, as it says here. So next slide. The reasons that we're concerned about moisture is that when you have excess moisture, you can get condensation. Condensation causes rot of the structure, and it also promotes mold growth. There's mold spores about everywhere, but mold needs two things to grow. It needs excess moisture, and it needs organic material. And so if you can cut down on the excess moisture, then the mold doesn't grow and it doesn't cause problems. So next slide. This is a picture that I took a couple of years ago. This home had a bath vent that was vented into the attic. And so all the moisture from when they took showers and whatnot went right into the attic and completely filled up the attic with mold. We were not, unfortunately, able to help this person. The next slide shows not all mold is black. This home with this entire crawl space was bloomed full with this yellow mold. So not all mold is black. And mold does cause us to defer homes frequently. Department of Energy does not allow us to use their money to remediate mold. So if we have a house that we want to weatherize that has more than 10 square feet, which is very small, 2 foot by 5 foot is 10 square feet. So if we want to weatherize a home that has more than that, we have to find funding elsewhere to remediate the mold. So next slide. For moisture control, these are all things I mentioned earlier. Use your range hood. Make sure it's ducted outside, properly installed bath fans. Use them every time you take a shower. Vent the dryer to outside with smooth, hard pipe. You can see in this picture, this is one of our clients. When we get done, all of our dryer vents look like that. Because the flex pipe, most of it actually, there's only one kind of flex pipe that's approved for dryers. All of that plastic and plasticized aluminum is not actually approved for dryer vent. And it causes clogs and other issues. So ground vapor barrier, as I mentioned earlier, and make sure that plumbing leaks are fixed promptly. So other hazards, unsafe wiring. We find that all the time in attics and in crawl spaces. Sewer leaks. This home, I took this picture. Their sewer line was disconnected, and this was in their crawl space, and they did not know. And so they were having, their home was very moist inside. They were having condensation everywhere, and this is what I found in the crawl space. We were able to help them. We got some brave contractors to go in there and take care of that issue and to get that stuff out of there. So asbestos is also another one that we find somewhat frequently in vermiculite insulation and like insulation that they used to put on pipes years ago. That also is cause for deferral because we are not allowed to deal with asbestos. That has to be done by an asbestos certified firm. So we have to hire, or us or the client has to hire somebody to get that done before we can weatherize. So next slide. So we went over the health and safety issues. So building science, we're talking about air movement, heating efficiency, and the thermal boundary. Next slide. So we talk about air movement so much because it affects your heating costs, it affects comfort, and it affects the structural durability of the home. We mentioned earlier that air carries moisture, and if you have air moving through your home, you've got moisture moving through your home. So next slide. So here's just a couple pictures of, if you get a snow, go out and look at your roof. If you see patterns like this one or the next one, go ahead to the next slide. You've got you could possibly have some issues, most likely have some issues with your insulation in your attic. This one looks like the beams in the roof of this church are not insulated properly, and so it's melting off every beam there in that church. So next slide. Sources of air leaks in the attic, chimney chases. So if you have let's say a water heater in the basement and your flue goes up through your first floor and then goes up through the roof through the attic, a lot of times we get in homes and you can actually see from the attic all the way to the basement with that, the chase around the chimney. We'll show a picture of one here in a little bit. Recessed lighting or can lights in the ceilings, those are terrible sources of leaks. Electrical plumbing penetrations, kitchen soffits, old kitchens. The kitchen cabinets didn't usually go all the way up to the ceiling, so they'd put a little drop ceiling there. Well, a lot of times those would not be insulated into the attic. Next slide. All right. So this is a picture of why can lights can be very bad. So that's a can light. The insulation is supposed to be yellow. The reason it's black is because of all the air that's coming up into the attic from the home. The insulation is basically acting as an air filter. And so all of the dirt, dust from the home is getting trapped in the insulation. So that's just an example of that. Next slide. Can we get the house too tight? We can. It doesn't happen very often, but air sealing saves a lot of money. But it can lead to indoor air quality issues if it's taken to an extreme and it's not accounted for. And so we do almost every home, probably 95% of the homes that we do get a mechanical ventilation fan. It's a high quality, low energy usage fan that the clients don't hardly notice, but they notice that the air quality improves in their home. Next slide. Home heating efficiency, there's 3 factors. The appliance itself, the building shell, we talked about air leakage and insulation already, and then the people that live there. Next slide. So the heating appliance itself, this is a picture of a newer 95% efficient furnace. And so that one's very efficient, but the sizing is very important. So if we had that 95% efficient furnace, but it was way oversized for a home, it would reduce its efficiency quite a lot because it short cycles. It comes on and heats the house up in like 5 minutes and then it turns off. And so oversizing can be a real problem. And then the heat distribution. Are the ducts done well? Can they get heat to all of the rooms? Can the air actually get back to the furnace so that it can reheat the air, that kind of a thing. So those play into heating system efficiency. Just a few tips. Clean your furnace regularly. Use a setback thermostat unless you have a heat pump. Heat pumps generally work better if they can stay within a 2-degree range. Make sure you clean your furnace filters. That's the biggest thing that anybody can do to improve the efficiency of their HVAC system in their house. And then it's expensive, but upgrading to a more efficient appliance can pay off in the long run, depending on your system generally. So next slide. The thermal boundary includes the insulation in the attic and the walls, the foundation. Doors and windows are also part of the thermal boundary. They are a weak point in the thermal boundary. We'll talk about that in a minute. And the thermal boundary should be well defined. It should be the wall and the ceiling. There shouldn't be, in the attic, it shouldn't be misplaced or anything like that. We get asked all the time. Greg touched on it earlier. Oh, you're going to come fix my doors and windows? No, we are not going to come fix your doors and windows. Very rarely, because they are weak points, but they are a very small percentage of the thermal boundary, and it's rarely cost effective. As far as our program is concerned, we have a specific energy modeling software that we use, and it has to call for it with a cost-effective return on investment. Honestly, plastic window kits are low cost and they are effective. Like if you have single pane windows, I encourage anybody and everybody to use those. They're a little ungainly, but they're going to save you quite a bit of money. So next slide. We spend most of our money in attics and foundations. Most of the energy efficiency upgrades are there. Probably 80 to 90% is there, unless we're putting in a furnace or something, because that's a big spend there. But we need to make sure that the insulation and air sealing in the attic is done well. Air sealing in the crawl space, moisture control in the crawl space, and then making sure that any ductwork that's like in the attic is insulated, so that when it's 110 degrees outside in the summertime and it's 135 degrees in your attic and you're trying to push your 60-degree air conditioned air through the attic, it doesn't come out of the ductwork at 80 degrees because you're 135 degrees in your attic. So we make sure that it's insulated if it's in the attic. Ways to reduce your energy costs: maintain your heating system. Make sure that we make sure that there's insulation, air sealing in the attic, and then the occupants have a huge say in how much their energy bills are. We have clients that call and say, "Oh, my heating bill is $400 or $500 a month," and then we go out there and it's a 25 or 30-degree day, and they got the front door open and they're sitting in their chair wearing shorts and socks. There's a disconnect there in their mind. They don't get that if they turn the thermostat down to 68 degrees and put on a sweater and a pair of shoes, that their energy bill would go down. And so part of what we do is also energy education. And so put on a sweater and wear some socks. It'll save you some energy. Next slide. So what would a client expect from us, and what do we expect of them? So next slide. So the weatherization application, there are some additional things that are needed in addition to what the energy assistance people need. Like we have to have an agreement from the landlord that they're not going to raise rent, that kind of a thing. Just a few tweaks here and there. Weatherization is not an emergency service. We get that quite a bit. There can be a wait time from application from weeks to months. Sometimes, unfortunately, we can only do so many in a certain amount of time. So your home will be audited by a trained auditor. The work crew will come out and do the work, and then it will be inspected at the end. Next slide. So these are the things that the homeowner needs, that we need. Yes, to answer Martha's question, renters can apply for weatherization. Clear access to the heating system is needed. We need to be able to get into the attic, and we need to be able to get into the crawl space. We will need access to all the rooms, and then your pets need to be under control. This beautiful dog was about the size of a horse, a huge Malamute, about knock you down when he wagged his tail at you, but very friendly. Next slide. Some of the things that the auditor will do: he determines what health and safety items need to be addressed. He will inspect your heating system. He'll do a blower door test. That's what this picture is. We put a big fan in the door, basically creating a small vacuum on the house to find air leakage areas and how badly the home is leaking. They assess the insulation in the attic and the walls, and then and also we answer questions that the client might have about their home. Next slide. After the inspection, the auditor enters all that information into the software and it produces a work scope. And then the work scope is determined by program guidelines, cost effectiveness, and available funding. So we don't always get to do what we want to do, and we don't always get to do what the client wants us to do. But what we do is always good, and it is always cost effective. So next slide. So like this furnace was obviously rusted out and no good. We did replace this furnace for this lady. And we did not do the work. We hired a contractor to come in and replace the furnace. And so next slide. The work crew, they come once it's written, once the work scope is written, the crew comes, and all of our crews are background checked and certified. The crews also have to go through training at the state to be certified to be in your homes. The contractors will install the materials and complete the tasks written in the work order. They cannot do stuff that's not on the work order. We get clients all the time saying, well, can you do this while you're here? Can you do this while you're here? Unfortunately, that's not a possibility for them. And then a final inspector will come and inspect all the work done at your home to make sure that all of it was done properly and that everything that was done that should be done. Occasionally, not very often, but occasionally, I find something. I'm the final inspector at our agency. Occasionally I'll find something that one of the auditors miss. And so then we'll have the contractor talk to the auditor and say, hey, I found this. What do you want me to do about it? And then, generally it'll get taken care of. So next slide. So the summary, we address health and safety issues in your home. We use building science and careful inspections to maximize energy savings. The work is done by certified contractors and inspected by an inspector. And most homeowners can expect energy savings from 10 to 35%. We've seen as much as 40 to 45% on some super old homes that were really terrible, but generally 10 to 35%. So thank you for the opportunity. And if you know anybody, encourage them to apply, please.
Thank you, Steve. That was wonderful. Julie, Greg, terrific information. And you can contact us if you would like help, or if you want to keep track of future webinars or look at some of the older webinars. Anna is our McKinney Climate Fellow working with us. Anna, are there any questions?
Yes, it looks like Miss Medler has asked Steve, I believe, can renters apply for the weatherization program?
So yes, we do. We don't, it doesn't matter to us whether the applicant is a homeowner or renter. The only issue is right now, we can't do multifamily. There's special certifications that you have to do, like multifamily apartments. We can do like a duplex, that kind of a thing, but we can't do like an apartment building right now. So a renter, yes, like a single family or a townhome or something like that. Yes, we can do renters there.
Fantastic. And I guess, I mean, I know that she asked that right when Steve was speaking, but Julie, can you also just give us a reminder? Are renters able to apply for the energy assistance program as well?
Yeah, for sure. There's, we encourage renters and owners. The only thing is the energy or the emergency repair and replace program. You must be a homeowner to benefit from that program. But other than that, energy assistance, help with the utilities is all the same for renters and owners.
Fantastic. Thank you. It looks like
Anna, I think we're at an hour, and I don't see any other questions in the chat. So I would encourage people to follow up with us or any of the speakers for additional questions or information. And really wonderful presentations that were full of a lot of information. And this will be posted as a recording. So if you miss something or you want to refer someone else to this information, we will be posting this on our website so you can access it later. Again, thank you all for attending the webinar. Thanks to our speakers and Anna. We hope to see you at the next webinar.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.